Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yugioh Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh video. So have you ever sat at home and asked yourself the question, gee, I wonder which Yu-Gi-Oh anime character has the most losses ever? No? Nobody? Just me? Well, I decided to put together a top 10 list of the most losingest characters in Yu-Gi-Oh anime history. Now, before we begin with the list, I do want to say there is no correlation between how good a character is and how good their dueling ability is. Sometimes characters that get a lot of wins may feel stale and like they're not really developing, whereas characters who are not really good duelists do still get a lot of really good development. So in no way is this list me trying to make fun of characters or take shots at characters or anything like that. I also do want to go over some criteria. So all 7 Yu-Gi-Oh shows are in play, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters all the way through Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, and we are only going to be looking at 1 versus 1 losses, or like 1v1v1 losses if I feel it makes sense and it's applicable. There are a lot of times where characters on this list will have lost in a 2v1 setting or a 2v2 setting, and I'm not counting those. I'm also not counting off-screen duels. That way we're not going to have Yuma at number 1 because he lost to Bronk 20-something times off-screen. We are only looking at 1v1 duels where the majority of them, or a good amount of them, does take place on screen. So with that being said, let's begin. These are the 10 most losingest characters in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime history. I hope you guys enjoy. Kicking off this list is actually 4 characters tied for 7th, starting with Edo from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, who had 5 losses throughout the GX series. So already right off the bat, you can tell that for any character to be on this list, they needed to have lost at least 5 1v1 duels throughout their respective show. Edo lost to Judai twice, Manjome in the final season, Amon when Amon summoned Exodia, and Sayu in the penultimate duel for the 2nd season of GX. Now, what's interesting about Edo actually having as many losses as he does is that Edo was not around when GX first started. It took a handful of episodes before Edo even debuted, which wasn't until the beginning of Season 2. So if Edo had been around from the start, he may actually be even higher on this list. Even so, he racked up a good amount of losses throughout GX and does kick off the list as one of the 10 most losingest duelists in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. Another character tied for 7th is Shark from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. Shark also lost a total of 5 times, but what's hilarious about this entry is that Shark only lost to 2 different characters. He lost to Kaito once and Yuma on 4 different occasions. Every other character on this list has lost to at least 4 different characters. Shark only lost, again, to 2. He just got smacked around by Yuma so many times throughout Zexal, and because of all those losses to Yuma, he actually does creep into this top 10 as one of the most losingest Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters ever, which is not really something I think of when I think of Shark. I don't really think of that when I think of most rival characters, but hey, what are you going to do? Shark is one of the characters tied for 7th on this list. Another character tied for 7th is Go Onizuka from Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Go also lost 5 times. Go lost to Revolver, Soulburner, Eye, and Playmaker twice. What I find hilarious about this entry is think about the names of the characters that Go lost to. Playmaker, Soulburner, Revolver, and Eye, and remember, that's when Eye was a human in the final season of Vrains. Arguably, the 4 toughest opponents in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains series. So, Go did have a lot of losses throughout Vrains, but he wasn't losing to cupcake opponents. He was losing to really difficult challengers, and that was one of maybe the issues with Go, and maybe some other characters in Vrains as well. They weren't necessarily bad duelists, but their records don't really reflect that because they ran into Playmaker, Soulburner, and Revolver so much. Go definitely fits that criteria, and so even though he is on this list, all of the characters he lost to are very tough opponents. Nonetheless, Go does come in tied for 7th. Our final character tied for 7th is Mimi Itachi from the Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's anime. Mimi lost to Yuga, Yugioh, Roa, Swirly, and Roman. What's a little sad about this entry is Mimi only had 5 duels in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, whereas the other 3 characters had a lot of big wins, Edo and Shark even beating the protagonists of their show at least once. Mimi did not have a single win, and so the fact that a Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s character who only dueled 5 times is one of the 10 most losingest characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! History is a little sad. But what are you going to do? Mimi is a winner in a lot of our hearts, but not a winner on the dueling field. Coming in 6th is Shingo from Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 with 6 losses. I really thought Sawatari was going to be very high on this list. Now, if you're familiar with my content, I often refer to Shingo as 0-9 Shingo, but really the criteria of what counts for this list saves Shingo from being much higher. Shingo lost to Yuya twice, Yuto, Sector Security, Yugioh, and I am counting the 4-way Battle Royale duel that he lost in as an eligible loss for this list. I am excluding his duels against Kaito and the Tyler sisters because they were tag duels he did with Gongenzika, and I'm excluding his loss against Zark because I feel like that duel is just kind of too subjective to put into a list given the 1v1 criteria that I want to try to stick to. So Shingo does have 9 total losses. I feel like only 6 are eligible for this list. I know a lot of people love Shingo. He's not my favorite character. And I do find it hilarious that he really never won a single duel throughout Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. I know he had a lot of tough matches. He did have a lot of memorable duels. His second duel against Yuya was great. His duel against Yugioh was very good. But Shingo, 0-9 Shingo, comes in 6th place with 6 losses on this list. We have 2 characters tied for 4th, the first being Joey Wheeler from Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. So our first Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, and actually our only Duel Monsters character, does appear on this list pretty high up, and it's one of my personal favorites in Joey Wheeler. Joey lost to Kaiba twice, Duke Devlin, Yami Yugi, Yami Marek, Mai, and Siegfried, and I am excluding his losses against Yugi and Taya because they were in the first 2 episodes, and they were playing the tabletop. I don't really view them as actual duels, so Joey had 7 losses in my eyes throughout Duel Monsters. Joey was one of my favorite characters to watch. I thought his growth was great, and I think he is a great example of a character being on this list and being one of the most losingest characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! History, but still being a really well-written character. Joey comes in tied for 4th in this list. Another character tied for 4th is Yuma Tsukumo from Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, who also racked up 7 1v1 losses in his show. He lost to Caswell, Shark, Bronk, Roku twice. I am counting both of those Roku duels, Lilybot, and Kaito. Now, what's really interesting about this is Yuma became an absolute machine in the second half of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. So all of these losses were really just in the first half of his show. He didn't lose at all in the second half of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. So it's interesting that even though he was invincible in that second half, he still lost so many times that he is one of the most losingest characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! History. I think Yuma, much like Joey though, a really well-written character who got a lot of development as the show went on. Yuma and Joey are tied for 4th as the most losingest Yu-Gi-Oh! Character in Yu-Gi-Oh! History. We have 2 characters tied for 2nd. The first is Otis from Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. Much like Mimi, Otis is a really sad entrant onto this list because he went 0-8 in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. He did not have a single win. He lost to Yuga 3 times, Gohai Yuga, Swirly, Luke, Gakuto, and Roman. I am counting the duels he had against Luke, Gakuto, and Roman in episode 24 as 3 separate duels because it was very clearly stated that it was 3 different copies of him dueling those 3 characters. If you think that it should be just 1 duel, you can deduct it to 6. Either way, Otis is going to be on this list in some capacity. I believe he lost 8 times. Otis is well, I don't want to get too into spoiler territory, but he's an important character in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, and the fact that he has the second most losses in Yu-Gi-Oh! History is crazy because he only dueled 8 times and he did not win a single duel that he was in. Maybe the less said about Otis at this point, the better, but Otis is tied for 2nd on this list with actually another Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s character. Another character tied for second is Odo Yuga with 8 losses, the main protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. Yuga lost to Luke twice, Roman, Roa, Nail, Asana, Yuo, and Tiger. Now, a good amount of these duels, Yuga was blindsided by a summoning method. Nail and Asana blindsided him with maximums, while Yuo blindsided him with the show's first fusion summon. So 3 of those losses, maybe Yuga had a bit of an unfair advantage, but it doesn't change the fact that he is one of the most losingest characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! History, and it doesn't change the fact that he has lost the most amount of times out of any Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist. Now, it's pretty fascinating that 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s characters make this list, even though Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s was only 92 episodes in comparison to a 150 episode runtime that a lot of its predecessors got. I think the reason for that is Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s focuses on rush duels, which, much like the name of the dueling style would imply, a lot of those duels were 1 episodes, and so you fit in a lot more duels in the 92 episodes that 7s aired than you did in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, even though Vrains had 30 more episodes, because Master Duels take a little bit longer to write, and a lot of the Vrains duels were 2 to 3 episodes. So I think that's the reason that even though 7s was significantly shorter than all the other Yu-Gi-Ohs, you have 3 characters making the top 10 on this list. But hey, that's just my thoughts on it. Yuga and Otis are tied for second for the most losses in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Before we get to our number 1 character, and the character that has the most losses in all of Yu-Gi-Oh!, I do want to go over a couple of honorable mentions. Yuya Sakaki lost 4 times, Mai lost 4 times, Aoi lost 4 times, and I'm not including the loss that she had against Ai when she tag dueled with Akira. If you want to include that, then technically Aoi did lose 5 times, but again, doesn't meet the qualifications. Asuka only lost 3 times. I'm not counting the Amnel and Truman losses, because we didn't really see those at all on screen, even though she did lose those duels. And Rex Raptor, my god, he only has 3 losses that qualify for this list, but he lost to Gurimo and Siegfried while he tag dueled with Weevil. He lost to Mai in the bedroom going to Duelist Kingdom in more ways than one. And he lost to Weevil on TV in episode 2 when they were showing the national championships. So Rex really has like 7 or 8 losses, but only 3 of them are eligible for this list. And so those are a couple of honorable mentions, a couple of characters that were close to cracking this list, but just missed out. Our number 1 character, the character that has the most losses in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is... That's right. It's Manjome Thunder, Chaz Princeton from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, who has 9 losses, maybe 11, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. Manjome has lost to Bastion, Asuka, Sayu, Ammon, and Judai 5 times. It is the most amount of times any single character has lost to the same character. Shark losing to Yuma 4 times was bad. Manjome lost to Judai 5 times throughout Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and we're not even counting the first encounter they had, which ended as a no result, which Judai would have won had the duel continued. Now, I'm also not including the duels against Truman and Amnel. Even though it is very obvious that Manjome lost those 2 duels, they're not shown enough on screen for me to comfortably add them to the list. If you want to add them, you can, and then Manjome lost 11 times. Either way, though, he's at the top of this list. Going into this, my prediction for most losses was between Manjome or Shingo, so I'm not too surprised that Manjome is up here. He is definitely a fan favorite, beloved by a lot of people for the goofiness that he brings. I always loved the manga version of Manjome, who I thought was just a more well-rounded character. I'm not a huge fan of Manjome personally in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. I don't think it's because he lost as many times as he did, but I don't know, maybe subliminally, I do feel like he lost a little too much. I think the writers maybe gave Manjome a couple more losses than he needed against Judai specifically and against a lot of characters. But there you have it. If you've ever wondered which character has lost the most amount of times in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, your answer, Manjome Thunder with 9 to 11 losses. And guys, that wraps it up. Those are the 10 most losingest characters in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, there may have been a couple characters that I missed, to be honest. I went through each of these shows very, very thoroughly, and I feel pretty good that this is a true and accurate list, but maybe a character or two did slip through the cracks. Again, we are only looking at 1v1, mostly on-screen duels. Tag duel losses do not count. Flashback losses do not count. And I think with all of that criteria in place, I do believe that this is a pretty accurate list. But let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know if you kind of agree with my reasoning as to why there's so many 7s characters on this list, and I just think it's because of Rush Duels being quicker to show than Master Duels. Let me know if you think there is actually any correlation between most amount of losses, or maybe not that many losses, versus you enjoying a character. Maybe you like when characters lose a lot because it gives them a chance to overcome and shine, but maybe there is a limit to that, and seeing a character lose 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 times does make that character a little harder to take seriously in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime setting. Let me know. I want to hear all your takes on it. But guys, no matter what, thank you so much for watching, and I really, really hope you enjoyed. This has been the 10 most losingest characters in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. Thank you so much for watching. A special thank you to my Platinum tier patrons, Panther J, Blue Maiden 28, and Jarrett Buller, and to my Diamond tier patrons, Jesse Wood and Latrell Smith, and to my Egyptian God tier patrons, Ccapacappuuu and Syn Cloud. To everyone who supports me on Patreon, and to everyone who is a YouTube channel member, thank you so much. The extra support means the world to me, and it allows me to make videos on a semi-daily basis, and I am forever indebted to you guys. Seriously, thank you so much. And definitely check out my channel membership feature and my Patreon for some extra channel perks. And thank you guys all so much for watching. Please leave your thoughts down below in the comment section. Be sure to check out my channel for some more Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime content, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.